I'd love to welcome Eileen Knott to the program. Thank you for being with me.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy you're here. And I'm just publicly, wanted to say that we've been trying to do this for a long time. I'm trying to remember when did you take the course? When was that?
Oh my God. I think it was last year, wasn't it? I
Yeah, I
think it
think you're
was
right. It was
last
last year.
summer, I believe.
Yeah, it was last summer. Because
Uh,
there was we had spoken afterwards because you did a short interview with me for your channel.
mhm.
And the way you asked the questions and the things you were saying, I could feel how much you embodied the work. And so I got really curious about your story, your experiences, the what you practice and offer. And that's why I really wanted to have you on here, just to kind of hear how you got to this point you're at and how you're incorporating somatics. When people hear me talk about it and they hear other guests, it really helps them to hear how people incorporate it in their lives and practices. So I don't know where you want to begin, but maybe just start by just telling us who you are to you, your work, what you do in the world.
Mm, mm. My journey started pretty late in life. It was in my later 40s. And that's when usually, there's hormonal shifts going on, there was midlife crisis going on. And, I had a health crisis that really shifted. It shifted. I've got to take care of myself. I've got to look at things differently, uh, and all that. So I employed energy healing. There was an energy healer that I worked with that did a distance healing on me. That I had this like stream entry experience. My whole reality was just shifted for it was almost a month. It was like 3 weeks to a month where, the colors were intense. My relationship to everything was like I was making love to everything, tables, chairs. When people moved, it felt like I was moving. When, I could feel what other people were feeling. And it was quite unsettling because the healer that I worked with had no clue what to do. I was very, it was very disruptive. And that began, I didn't have any teachers or meditation connections. Like I had nothing. So I relied on the earth. It began my first experience of having a daily practice. I didn't know what to do. I was feeling so unsettled from this beautiful experience because it was so different than how I experienced life before. And so I began laying on the earth. I began laying on the earth before I went to work in the morning and just surrendering into that solidness, into that. And she would hold me. And it was absolutely beautiful. And that was the start of uh, kind of a daily practice, a connection with myself, a deeper connection with nature. I've always had a deep relationship with nature, but it really, really connected it at that point. And from there, I think it was about a year after that experience, and a lot of things shifted. I stopped drinking. Some of the old patterns fell away, but a lot of them were still there. Despite this beautiful transcendent experience, Eileen was still Eileen underneath it. I had grown up in an Irish Catholic home. My parents were alcoholics, and that led to a lot of. I had a very bad relationship with my mother, and that led to a lot of traumatizing experiences. I didn't have that bonding, with that primal relationship, and so I lived my life according to those patterns. And after that awakening experience, I was like, wow, I don't want to go back to that. And after a year, I found myself kind of sinking into depression again, sinking into, drinking again. I'm like, whoa, I don't want to go here. I need something else. I need to find, and in my mind, I needed to find another healer. And so I heard this man on a podcast, And he was, his voice, there was something in his voice that was so clear. I said, I want that clarity in my soul. I want that. And so what was supposed to be a gift for my 50th birthday to go see this healer in New York City ended up being an 8-year journey that uh, completely healed so many aspects, so many deep aspects of trauma in my life, of dissociation, of a lot of those things that we have when we have traumatic childhoods. And yeah, I continue to work with him today because the process of growth, it doesn't end. Unfortunately, people don't want to hear that. They want to hear, somewhere down the road, I'm going to be healed. But the process, it continues. You have to love the journey for what it is. And that's getting in relationship with yourself. And that journey continues and it continues. And you think you healed something and you go further into it. And that's what creates, it creates the depth, it creates the groundedness, it creates the solidity of who we are and our relationship to ourselves. And that makes our relationships to other people and the world, that pulls it together. So many times people try to heal the external relationships first, and it doesn't quite work.
I want to pause you there a minute because you said some pretty powerful things. The first thing that I love is you're giving us this glimpse into when a huge awakening occurs, it doesn't mean everything's perfect then. And I love that because I had the same experience, this huge kind of, otherworldly like transformation, yet the body patterns that we picked up for decades still express themselves. It's not like, okay, I woke up and I was healed. So I love that you had this experience of suddenly feeling in relationship to all these things and beings around you. And it was so incredible. And it was dysregulating. So it was so big. And these old patterns were still part of your body. So I just kind of wanted to like just hover there for a minute, just so we could feel into that and just tell us a little more about what that was like to have a part of you wake up for the first time and that part be in relationship with other parts that were still, let's say, trauma responding.
Hmm. Hmm. So yeah, the experience was beautiful. And like you said, but it was dysregulating because it was a lot. And as I still, at that point, even after that experience, I was so locked up inside that when I did this phone call in, uh, um, like a phone webinar kind of thing where you just call in and there's no video involved. And I was so locked up from my patterns that I couldn't even introduce myself. And this is what you said. It's the body. The body holds this. Now, even though I had that tremendous experience, which would be, enlightening and expanding, the traumas the body were still holding in those patterns. I couldn't express myself. I was shy to an nth degree. And working through those patterns, it took time, but they were still there, even though that great experience happened,
Yeah. And that's just so important for me, for people to hear. And I guess for myself to hear, because it's, when you were talking about the teacher and the clarity, that's how I felt the first time I heard Byron Katie speak. I don't know if you've ever done her work or heard of her, but I felt this sense of ease and clarity. And I thought, ooh, I want to feel that. And I remember her story of like literally waking up on the floor and her whole mind changed. And then I got all these books from the very beginning of her, like, let's say, transition into a different life. And it was like a 7, 8, 9 year period of actually being able to handle everything that was coming in. And that's important for people to hear because in like catharsis culture, we go into these huge, whether it's ayahuasca or breathing, or just like you had this incredible shift from an energy session. There's these moments that are very cathartic, and we're still in these physical bodies that have boundaries and nutritional needs, and they get tired and they're very physical and earthly. They can't transcend the way the mind can. So I think it's great for people to hear, even when something big and magical occurs in my life, my body still has to take time to integrate that. So I would love to hear, what were the tools for you to start and continue to integrate that?
Hmm. So, like I said, it was about a year after, and then I went to this other healer then down in New York City, and his healing sessions were 3 hours long. So there was, you spent time talking, he can read auras. And the middle part of that 3 hour session was a deep dive into feeling in your body, feeling the emotions, breathing very softly into the body. And I hated that part. I was living very outside, very up in my head. And we got to that part, and he was like, "What do you feel in your abdomen?" And I couldn't feel anything. I kind of laughed and I said, "I see yellow." And, he kind of had this stern but gentle voice that said, "Let's try again." And uh, the other parts of his sessions were on the table. And so it was time before I did his practices, because it was uncomfortable to sit with myself, because there was a great deal of pain stored in there from my childhood traumas. And it was way more comfortable to be sitting outside of that. Um, but in the beginning, I literally started only with 2 minutes of sitting and breathing. And then of course I had a lot of energy, so I was like, this isn't for me. But over time, the value of these practices, I get so emotional. They are so powerful in getting us in relationship with ourself. This is what we want. Like, we want to be in relationship with ourself, but we're often just too scared and too frightened. So I had to work at this. It didn't come, the healing part of those sessions definitely were big bump ups, but I had to do my own homework with this. I had to put in the time. I had to put in the effort and the willingness and the vulnerability to be with myself in that way and do the practices. So it was a very long time. I started 2 minutes, it was ages before I worked up to like 10 minutes in just gently breathing and finding the emotion in the body. And just he utilized breath work, which worked for me. I know for some people, breath work is too activating in and of itself, but breath work did work for me. So his practices definitely, sent me on my path. But it took time. And
Well, I'm also hearing that you did breath work in in conjunction with a lot of embodiment. I find when people go into breath work without any relationship building of the body sensations, it can be, re-traumatizing or really activating or even dissociative. And they think they're feeling relief, but they're just dissociating. But you're already doing this work with him around really grounding into your body. So I feel
mhm.
like when you have that practice and then you do something cathartic or powerful like breath work, it can be a really beautiful tool.
I'm so glad you brought that up about breath work, because I actually just had somebody who had experienced a lot of trauma, but they were doing these particular like Indian breath works that were very fast and very and they were like, "Oh, I'm so blissed out and I'm so happy, but I still feel like there's something wrong." and and when I tried to begin some work, there was like there was no way she was relating at all to any parts of her body, and so the breathing was actually causing uh, more dissociation, more difficulty. I don't think people realize that because it feels good. You feel blissful, you
Yes,
feel energetic, and you think this is the ticket, but
that's right.
it, it's it really can be more damaging. It was it, you know it, uh, I had so much energy in the beginning, and Ben would often he had abilities and would often tone that down, and I could never understand why. But that is why,
Why,
because
yeah.
in order to get into relationship, you can't be out in space and out or spiritually bypassing, because the richness of who we are deserves the quiet, the settled, and the grounding.
Mhm.
It's not the fireworks.
Yes.
The fireworks are nice icing, but uh, the true satisfaction, the true joy that we have is when we connect with ourselves. I remember for the first time, after doing some of the practices, of finally being able to feel that sensation of popcorn in my abdomen, of emotions waking up and becoming alive. And I was like, wow, for 50 years, I've been dead,
Yeah.
because, and now I'm now inhabiting my body, and I'm
Yes.
feeling those sensations. And this is so rich, and it's delicious, and uh, it's just wonderful. You're wonderful. You're coming home to where you've always wanted to be. And I can't, and it's so simple in a way, but it's also scary, because when we've separated for so long, like for me, it was decades. I mean,
Yeah.
I was 50 when I started, which, for all you out there, it's never too late to start, ever, because the quality of my life in the last 8 years I would never give that back. I would never give that back, even starting this late in life.
I find
So
this really important because you've mentioned this a couple times about, connection to self and relationship to self. And if we think about dissociation, and we even think about like the dissociation of sensations and emotions in our bodies, it's a really powerful thing to settle into through the lens of trauma, because dissociation is what we do when we're traumatized, and that disconnect from self is what kind of continues the reenactment of trauma, because we lose ourselves. So when we do something that's really cathartic, that takes us out of our bodies, again, it reenacts this pattern we've been in of being out of our bodies, which is where we like to be, because we don't have the capacity to feel what's inside of us. So when you're talking about it's delicious, just that description is the transformation. It's not about, just for people listening, it's not about, oh, I'm healed, I never have a bad day. It's about, now I have this relationship to these parts of me. So when pain comes up, pain can actually become delicious. It can be this like decadence that I settle into because I have this capacity to be with it. And that kind of relationship building to the parts of us that are inconvenient and high sensation and painful, I find to be so important and wise when it comes to healing. Again, we're not healed because we don't feel pain. It's a healing because there's this depth and capacity to meet the pain. And that's, to me, what the transformation is about. Is that how you experience it?
absolutely, absolutely. It's getting into that relationship with those parts of yourself, as well. And it it is, many people think that healing is happiness, and it's not. It's relationship to all parts of ourselves. And actually, when you go into and meet those painful experiences, feelings from the past, wherever you're holding it in your body, and you dive into and embrace and hold that kind of pain, it actually increases your capacity for joy.
That's right.
Because when you're one-sided, um, you're limiting your bandwidth to, okay, I'm only going to experience the happy, the joyful. I don't want to touch any of that pain stuff. You limit the bandwidth of your experience, and it limits your joy. So when you are able to embrace and feel and really embody those difficult parts of yourself, you increase your capacity to feel joy as well, and that expands. So it's like a win-win. But it's hard. We often, it's such a distractive culture that we live in. As soon as we feel something painful, there's many opportunities to distract and dissociate from that. So it takes real consciousness and awareness and a bit of work to sit down and acknowledge, wow, this is really painful or scary or frightening, or I'm afraid. But
Absolutely. Well, that
it's,
piece about joy is so important, again, to even reiterate, because joy and bliss and inspiration and excitement, they hold a charge, just like the pain and the fear do. And so if you only have a little bit of capacity for charge, I always say charge is non-binary, because the nervous system that's traumatized doesn't really matter about the source. Like you said, it has a certain bandwidth. So if I'm practicing my body having the bandwidth for my pain, that depth that gets created, that resilience, that space in the nerves, also creates space for more joy. And I think
mm,
that's so beautiful to pendulate between the two. As I feel the pain and I move through that, now let me feel how deep I can go into joy instead of just focusing on the pain or the joy. So I'm glad you brought that piece in. Tell us how these personal experiences have cultivated your own private or personal practice. Like, what do you tell us your actual work? What do you offer for people? How do you hold space?
mhm. So, part of, I just want to add in, part of what I do, uh, I continually work on myself in working with very gifted healers. I have been on 14 vision quests over the last 7 years, which, we go 4 days and nights without food and water, uh, alone in the wilderness. I do sweat lodges very often. So these are a means of purification, and they um, assist in being a very clear conduit to hold space for people. Because the clearer you are within yourself, you can hold a broader space for people. So um, I really encourage anyone that works with me have a meditation practice before they engage in healing sessions with me. I offer individual healing sessions, and they run, about an hour and a half or two. And we spend time talking, um, allowing, uh, what people need to arise. We do some breathing and somatic work and finding where those experiences are in the body. And there's some table time with that. I do offer work over Zoom, and uh, I offer a lot of meditation work because I feel like it's so imperative for people to get into a daily relationship, to set aside. I always use if you never spend time with your partner, you wouldn't have any relationship. And we don't value the time spent in meditation and somatic practices as valuable. And it's incredibly valuable. So I have a lot of meditation support to get people to begin to get in that relationship. It also is a grounding for after the healing sessions, because there can be a lot of disruption as patterns are being changed quickly. People need uh, the breathing practices and meditation practices help integrate what happens in session. So it's kind of super important with that. I have a lot of free stuff online. You can come sit with me in meditation, and I've had people experience actually healing just from coming to that. There's no talking or guidance. You could just come sit with me, just come be in relationship with yourself, but we're doing it together. And there's always power in working together in group. I have Women's Healing Circle that I have an in-person one in Cobleskill, New York, which if you're in that area, you can certainly come, like the third Fridays of every month. And I have an online one the first Friday of every month. So, and the circles are run the same way. We get into
Can you hear me, Eileen? There you are.
sorry, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. We can edit that very easily.
Something always happens. I thought it was plugged in.
So you're saying about your circles?
Yeah. So the circles, we again spend time orienting to the space and to ourselves and honoring that. We work on breathing, relaxing, and finding those feelings of what we're going through in the body, locating them, being present to them, embodying them, exhaling, and it's usually guided. So I work with what's happening in my circle. So there isn't this exact formula that I do. I'm working with what's happening in the circle at that time. So,
Yeah, I love that.
and the circles also have an individual healing component. We're working collectively, but my energy is focused very individually. So my in-person circles are limited to 4 people to give women that very personalized experience. So things can get a little lost in a huge group.
Yeah, that sounds beautiful. And how can people find you?
They can find me at relaxandexpand.com. It's Relax and Expand on all the social medias. But I also have another website which you can access through Relax and Expand, womenshealingcircle.com. And it's woman with an A, because it's your individual. It's your
Yeah,
individual circle.
yeah, I love it.
My daughter said, "You're spelling it wrong." I'm like, "No, it's for each individual woman." So
There's a purpose.
it has a, yes, it has a purpose.
Well, Eileen, I really want to thank you for coming on here and your patience as we got this scheduled. And it's been so nice to learn from you and share you with everybody.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's been great.
Okay, you take good care.
Okay, bye-bye.